Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me for another great conversation. As always, I appreciate you guys. My next conversation is one of my favorite ones to have because it's centered around user data privacy on the internet, and that's important to me, and it should be important to you. For too long, we've been giving companies like Facebook and Google all of our information, all of our data. They've made a killing, and we've made nothing from this. My next guest has spent most of his career trying to battle this problem and fight this war. I introduce to you guys the very knowledgeable and very passionate Joshua Long. Hey, Josh, thanks for joining us here on the podcast today, man. I really appreciate it. I know we had to reschedule, so I'm glad that I was able to get you back because I'm really excited about this conversation we're about to have, man.
That's all good. The feeling is wholly mutual here. So thanks for having me.
Sweet, sweet. So before we get into, what you're up to and a little about some of the things that are going on, please let the people know about yourself and what it is that you're currently doing.
Of course, yeah. So my name is Josh, and I am the head of marketing for an alternative search engine called Mojeek, which is a UK-based crawler index search engine, which is something that is quite a rarity when it comes to the web now. I think that a lot of people, when you say alternatives to Google, alternatives to Bing, they'll come up with a bunch of different names, but the vast majority of these things are not. They're not actual search engines, like what we'd call like a proper real search engine. What they are meta search engines. They take the results from other search engines and then kind of add something on top of it. Quite often it's no tracking or some kind of charitable aim, and serve people with results that way. But Mojeek is very different in that respect. Like, we build our own index. We go out and actually find results and build them into a back end in order to serve people results for queries. Quite a rarity in the modern web. But I guess to give a bit more on myself, like to go a bit deeper on that, like yep. I am a person who's been working in marketing communications for a good 7-8 years now, and probably about in the middle of that tenure, I started to kind of wake up to the things that I was engaging with on a daily basis, and the way in which maybe some of the stuff that we have kind of accepted happening when it comes to the provision of products and services is a bit creepy. Like, yeah. There's this whole kind of structure that has evolved and that a lot of businesses have bought into because it's the way that they go about marketing their products. It's the way that they go about selling them. That is not necessarily good for the world, for the web, for the way in which we, I guess, would like to have a system that we can openly access information and openly communicate. And so around about then, I started thinking about the ways in which I could maybe leverage the knowledge that I built up, the skills that I built up over time, and kind of direct them more towards a route that was closer to the world that I'd like to live in. And so I started off my first job that was kind of like a pro privacy marketing was with a company that is building a blockchain based social media network, which is quite a cool thing. Like censorship resistant, like you own your stuff, like the credentials and things like that are not necessarily old web things.
Okay.
I was doing that gig for a while and then moved over to working for Mojeek. I guess the background to all of this is I believe that something is fundamentally wrong with the way in which we currently kind of look at the web. And I'd like to do my absolute best to move it in a direction that is better for people.
Yeah, I actually champion that cause, man. I'm with you. I want to go back a little bit, though. That moment when you realized that, you were noticing that there was some crazy stuff going on. Was it like direct something that happened to you, or was it just what you were watching your peers do, or what kind of eureka moment was it?
I think it was something that happened to me. I mean, I don't have very many friends who work in the same industry as me. Like the people who I like hold like quite dear to myself, they're very variegated when it comes to the stuff that they're up to. But I think it would have been when I was working at, I mean, I don't want to drag any company that I've worked for, obviously, like this,
sure.
For me, this is like it's I have a structural analysis of the thing. So anybody who's involved in that system, obviously it's not great to be doing it, but at the same time, it's not necessarily their fault. So like I'm not. This is not me trying to slam the company for it at all. But I was working at a company that was doing like traditional digital marketing, as much as you can call it traditional, because obviously it's like the last 20 years basically. And we were experiencing a kind of a downturn year. We were having a little bit more of a difficulty when it came to selling our product, which was it was an event, basically like trying to get people to sign up for an event.
Sure.
And the person who was kind of the MD, chief exec, whatever position you want to give this individual, was drilling down into the data a bit more with me and attempting to find ways in which we could do more targeted advertising, like ways in which we could take the characteristics of the audience that we already had and attempt to find like slices of it that we could drill into a little bit more. And there were a few ways in which I guess you could have taken the data that it started to not sit well with me. And I mean, now I've got to a position where the vast majority of this targeted advertising, maybe actually all of this targeted advertising, doesn't really sit well with me at all. But at that point, I started to kind of wake up and go, it's kind of strange that someone can come to this space, and that space was Facebook at that time. And they can come there for their goal is to talk to their friends and to share some silly news articles and to set up some events. And you're just kind of like sat there in the conversation, sort of poking them and going like, well, I mean, you've come to this space in order to have this free exchange of information, this free communication stuff. But also we're aware that you've got this kind of string of behaviors that have happened before, where you've clicked on a thing and like some UID, some like kind of tracking code has jumped onto you about that. And you start to think like, this is it. It's quite a weird thing for something which, in the case of Facebook, they were talking about it as like the modern public forum, like the modern kind of like public space in which you converse. Like, it's kind of strange that there's this other thing bubbling up at the same time as you're having all that conversation and you're having all of that exchange of information that's sort of like poking you and pushing you towards these different products and these different things. And
it's nasty.
Exactly. And I think there was the main thing that really hammered it home was I was doing a lot of reading at the time. Like when I was a lot younger, I used to be very, very into my sci-fi. Like John Wyndham is a very OG sci-fi like British author. Philip K. Dick is one that I think people would be more familiar with, like Minority Report and stuff like that. And then I kind of dropped it whilst I was at university. I stuck solely to like what the books that we were assigned were, and some other kind of like related to my area of expertise type thing, which was economics reading. And at the same time as I kind of started to think more deeply about the ways in which the activities that we were undertaking in the marketing department might be a little bit creepy, I was also reading books that maybe sort of gave me a little bit more of a frame there and started to like kind of uncover things for me. Which I think like it's one thing that we've got as a big kind of mission statement when it comes to Mojeek. I think a lot of this stuff manages to happen because people are kind of ignorant of it. Like there's a level of not knowing that happens there. And educating yourself is like, it's the best weapon you can possibly have. People always ask me when it comes to things around privacy and security, like which email provider can I use in order to be private or secure? And I'm like, well, there's an answer to that question, but the deeper answer to the question is like, get yourself to a situation where you don't have to ask me about it. Like, find a place where you can find materials that you can use to arm yourself in order to have this foundational level of knowledge about the processes that are happening that allow you to not need to like talk to me about it. Like you can go through the privacy policy of an email provider, or you can go through the things that are being put out by somewhere and analyze them yourself. It's education is everything when it comes to this stuff, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think like you hit on the head that most people are just zombied, right? They basically think that this is a free service, but it goes back to that old saying, if it's free, then you are the product, right? So a little bit on me. In 2019, I started a digital marketing company on my own, and
Uh-huh.
I ran a lot of Facebook ads for clients and stuff like that. And I think by far what wowed most of my clients when I would sit down and talk to them and we would talk strategy is the fact that Facebook would allow me to literally nail down to a T to when they just had a kid, to what shows they like, to who they like, to if they had a birthday, if they just got married, how much money they make. It was just, and their jaws would drop. I mean, as entrepreneurs, the opportunity that they saw that could come of this was just like, big bucks, cha-ching. But
Yeah.
you can tell in the back of the head they were thinking like, wow, like how much information does Facebook have on me, the business owner, never mind the people that we're trying to market to. So I'm with you. I think these companies, in the beginning, they offered an innocent service, right, which is a playground for us to hang out, like you said. But that was at a time where we had no other way of kind of having this type of move through space and time. So at the time, the deal was okay, right? The proposition that they made was like, okay, I'll sign up for your service if you're allowing me to do X, Y, Z. But I think what happened along the way was, they build business models on top of this. They figured out that, if, like you said, if they don't know what's going on, they can just, use our information and sell it off to do something else and build this massive advertising platform. And meanwhile, while they're making these billions on ads, you and I don't get paid a single cent for the contributions that we make to these platforms.
It's a very, very good point. I think one of the things, one of the analogies that a lot of people have kind of really liked recently was, I don't know if he said it first, but Jaron Lanier, who's one of the people who works for Microsoft, I think in the kind of like VR sort of area,
Okay.
he called data the new oil. And like it's a difficult one to say like this is a completely correct statement,
Yeah.
because you can't take a bundle of oil and copy that oil and paste it to another location and still get the same utility out of the two bundles of oil. Like oil is what we call in economics a rival good.
Right.
Once someone's consumed it, someone else cannot consume it. But yeah, it is something that has become very much the backbone of like the consumer capitalist industry online. Like it fuels so much of what happens when it comes to the sale of products. And I mean, we're talking currently in the context of COVID. I don't really know what is currently happening in the States. I'm in the UK, and we're all currently still in a lockdown situation up
Right.
until I think April is when we're supposed to get the first chance of not being in this situation.
Yep.
And so online shopping has just gone absolutely yeah. It's pretty much everything is being purchased online. One of the stealth things that I think a lot of people don't necessarily push into the same box is we have food delivery services like Deliveroo,
Okay.
Just Eat, whatever you want to call it, which are
Yeah.
also like creating profiles on you, whilst they also algorithmically manage a bunch of employees who are being paid basically nothing in order to deliver things, and it's fairly arduous work. The thing that you picked up on there, the kind of extractive nature of it, like that is I think something that it really does kind of require an ability to structurally analyze this situation
Right.
in order to like reach that conclusion. And I mean, I, I don't blame people for not wanting to engage with this thing, because it's very difficult once you
Yeah.
start like picking apart and like pulling the corners up and looking into it. You start to realize that there's a lot of things that you do that like they're not really okay if you were going to view it in kind of a broad sense. It
Sure.
is difficult. Like people don't like to engage with things that make them feel like they've done bad things, because
Yeah.
that's painful, that hurts you.
Exactly. You're right on that. Yeah. I just, I'm okay with the extraction nature to a certain point, right? I'm not completely okay with it. But if they were to try to, reimburse us or the creator or the poster or the content engager, if they were to incentivize us, then it would be a fair relationship, in my opinion. It would be, okay, you're giving me the arena, you're giving me the tools, you're giving me, the business page where it gives me analytics, which as a business owner, I could use those analytics now to improve my business and be able to get better. So you're giving me all these tools, but what you're not giving me is, basically royalties on what I bring to the platform, right? So you're calling this free, you're making me come in here, you're telling me to make as much money as I can, but therefore you set the rules and you can censor me. Now I've gone through this perfectly personally, I should say, because I was trying to, last year before COVID, I put together a little course on how to start a business, and Facebook banned it. They told me that I was basically selling snake oil. They were like, look, you can't do this. You can't tell people that you can do this, etc. So they banned the account completely. On the other hand, I started to think about all the content, all the videos, all the engagement that I brought to Facebook, and that stuff was not banned at all. It was, as long as it's in their favor, it's not in our favor, the small guy, right?
So I mean, so that cuts to something which is something that there's another kind of lens to this that I guess hasn't been a part of what we've been talking about so far.
Okay.
Which kind of the opacity of these platforms when it comes to you being a customer from like any level. So this is something to relate it back to Mojeek that we kind of pride ourselves on, is that if somebody comes to us with some kind of a query about search results or functionality or things like that, you will be replied to by a team member. Someone will get back to you and someone will treat whatever it is that you've said with the greatest care, because we value the people that have chosen to move a part or a whole of their searching activity onto an alternative search engine.
Sure.
And I mean, you and I will both have many experience of this from different levels, but have you ever tried to push a customer service query as a business or a user to Facebook or like Google's help desk? It is a trip, because they understand that they don't need to do any of that kind of like good customer facing stuff. Like they can quite easily exist without having to put much money or thought into handling the queries that come in and the complaints that come in. They can basically ignore you because they're gigantic. A lot of people will bulk, I think, especially if they're of a very traditional way it's taught in universities, academic view of economics, but they are essentially what we would call a monopoly. Like the theory there, a lot of people would say monopoly, if you divide it up and you take like the two parts of the I believe Greek word, you would have to have one company providing all those services. Now I personally don't think that's a useful way of using the word monopoly. In my eyes, you have to understand that something verging towards a monopoly should kind of be treated as a monopoly also.
Absolutely.
Like, got that thing coming down the way. And they don't care. Like I mean, Facebook is, I think, kind of it's dying a very, very slow and elongated death right now.
I agree.
But Google is having just as much success as it ever had, and it has countless lawsuits coming up at the moment. And I mean, you saw what happened with the News Australia thing, for example. Like that's one example of a gigantic industry publishing, a gigantic industry Google with, I mean, like what exactly would you say they do? They do absolutely everything. Kind of coming together and colluding in some way in order to give the kind of illusion that you've had some kind of beneficial outcome for the publishing industry. And really, it's just like a nominal payment going to some gigantic Murdoch corporations. Like, they're the only game in town. Very big problem.
It's absolutely terrible. And just to go back a little bit, in that example with Facebook where I got banned, you're right. They give you a button where you could basically appeal the reason you got blocked. I sent it in. it must have been just an automated response because all I got back is you messed up our terms and conditions. Here's a link to read on the terms and conditions. So then they give you a second shot to release your ad account. And I was like, well, let me try this again. And then they gave me a little field where I could put in. So I typed in, I need some specifics in order to be able to fix what it is that you guys don't agree with. Can you please let me know what that is so I can get back as a small business to try to provide for my. That second one was automated. And since I used up my 2 on those automations, the account got completely squashed. It got blocked. There was no way for me to recover this. And I agree. There's no customer service there. They don't care about the business. When I went to one of my mentors and I told him this, hey, man, they got me blocked and I lost my 2 appeals. He basically told me this. I told him, I was like, hey, I know a bunch of people that are selling courses like mine. What's happening here? He was like, look, he asked me, he was like, how much are you spending on your advertisement? And I'm like $1,000 a day. That's the problem. He's like, you're getting blocked because you're not spending $1 million a day like these other companies are. It's insane. And they squashed me. I couldn't do anything with it.
It's is it Nietzsche? I stare into the void and the void stares back at me. Like that's what
I think it might be Nietzsche actually.
But I think this kind of cuts to so you said the word censorship, and I think this is like a very valuable lens with which you can kind of tie together a lot of people of sort of different political opinions and stuff like that, because
sure.
So recently we had the capital stuff that went on, and a component to that was the getting rid of Parler, the alternative social network. And like I prefer not to like kind of dig into the sort of like the exact politics of this thing, because I think it kind of obscures the point. So sure. We had Parler was gone from the Apple Store and it was gone from the Google Play Store, and that was basically 2 very, very gigantic corporations saying this this thing cannot be a part of our stores. And a bunch of people on one side said, yes, this is absolutely great, get rid of them, like they're spreading misinformation, blah 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 blah. And then we moved on a little bit further forward in time, and a messenger that is very dear to my heart, which is Element Messenger, which is based upon a protocol called Matrix. Basically, it's a federated messenger. So you might be using Signal, for example. I'm not. Yeah. Signal, love it. But at the same time, it is fundamentally a centralized service that if it was to get shut down or honeypotted or something like that, we would have a problem. Okay. Element is basically doing a very, very similar thing to Signal, except from it's federated so people can run their own instances. So if you and I decided that the things that we're saying in this interview right now were way too spicy for them to be hosted even on Signal, we could set up our own little like server and we could converse on there. And unless the UK security services decided to come into my house and specifically get that thing, we'd pretty much be fine. We'd be good. Okay. Over the course of a weekend, and I mean, it's back up now, but over the course of a weekend, the Google Play Store suspended Element Messenger, which meant that people who were running, who were using Android devices couldn't download it as a standard thing. Obviously, wow. Android has the sidestep of the APK thing where you can sideload an app. You can download an app without having to involve the Play Store. And I encourage people to do that all the time.
Likewise.
Don't bother with the Play Store. But what you're doing is you're making it so that I mean, you might have had these situations as well. I'm sure you have, as an individual who loves technology, who is definitely up on these things as well. You've had situations where you've attempted to kind of convert, and this is a very like religious way of saying it, but I can't think of that way of saying it. People who are maybe not necessarily as up on these issues of privacy and security into using something that you're using. For me, it was Signal. Like I had a mass exodus of friends. We were all chatting on a big Facebook convo ages ago, like maybe 4-6 years ago, and I said, hey, maybe we should shift this elsewhere. I don't really feel comfortable with using Facebook for this stuff. And thankfully, my friends are great people and they were all willing to humor me. And now, like, there's a decent amount of them that are evangelists of Signal who will go, yeah, this is the better messenger to use. But if we'd been in a situation where Signal had been banned from the Google Play Store, and those people had been using Android things, I'm not sure that I would have been able to get them to do the APK route. It's like there's extra steps that have been added in here.
Yeah, true.
So grounding it back in what was the thing that I picked up on before I went on this this big rant around censorship, like it cuts both ways. Like the problem is you can cheer for your political side having won in some way against the forces of the other one when it comes to the banning of an app from an app store. But the bigger problem here is that Google has the ability to ban that app from the app store. Like that it's not a good thing. We should not be putting our trust in them in any way, shape, or form when it comes to that process. Like,
right.
Yeah,
it's scary. Yeah, here we had the, obviously the President Trump thing where they removed them off of Twitter. And, if anybody listens to this podcast, know that I'm not the biggest Donald Trump fan for whatever reason, but that's irrelevant to the point, right? The point is that you're doing no different Twitter, no different Google, no different Facebook than in the medieval times with the book burnings, right? Like you're trying to basically exile a whole part of a population to learn, to basically leave it up to them if what they believe and what they're reading is true or false. You can't be the orator of information unless you declare yourself a publisher. You can do that and just start paying people, which I think is where we're going here. Twitter's latest announcement of being able to pay people for their tweets or whatever, I think is a direction, and these companies kind of doing the okey doke, right? Where it was like, oh, we're getting a lot of heat for banning people. But if we, open this platform up for people to start getting paid for these things or whatever, then therefore we are more of a publisher than we are anything else. And then that kind of gives us a little more gray area to work in. But I'm a little bit ahead of even that because I feel with, 2020 being, what it was, and with people having more time to realize these, things that you and I have probably picked up on for a little while now, we get to the point now where we see things like what Bitcoin is doing, right? What blockchain technology is doing, right? And now we're at the point, I feel, where it's like, well, wait a minute. When I signed up with you, Facebook, and I signed up with you, Google, I needed you to facilitate this exchange because there was nothing out. Now we have a way to do this without the middleman, without having to trust anybody, and I think this is where the landscape slides over and says, okay, you said it a little while ago, Facebook is burning slowly. And I think it's because of this. I think people are realizing that we have been giving them all the power. In the beginning, we were dumb. We didn't know. And now it's forcefully. Now we're so embedded in these ecosystems that it's really hard to pull our businesses out of it. And it's really hard to pull ourselves out of it. So it's this new mass awakening of people that are just realizing that, we need to decentralize these big platforms, and they're way too powerful, especially here in the States when they got a bunch of lobbyists sitting in DC, flooding millions and millions of dollars and getting their way. I mean, Amazon wouldn't be Amazon if they weren't able to manipulate, politics, if that makes any sense.
Oh Lord, yes.
I went on a rant there. I'm sorry.
No. Because we have a pretty identical understanding of the problematic stuff when it comes to the interrelation between.
Right.
I mean, America is like the kind of patient zero when it comes to this stuff. At least like. In the UK, we are taking a lot of direction when it comes to what happens in your country. But yeah, it's very, very disconcerting that companies like Facebook, like Google, can essentially hire some talent in order to press politicians to do things for them. Like that fundamentally undermines the idea of democracy in such a big way, because like at the end of the day, you and I are a unit of one, and we might maybe bundle together with a bunch of other people who have a similar kind of analysis of things, and maybe we've got a bit more power, but we will not beat these gigantic corporations because they have these stupid quantities of money. Like they can always flesh up more, and it's yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've been kind of following the recent sort of appointments when it comes to Biden. Like speaking specifically on US politics is actually something that I do follow to a decent degree and have been for a good like 8 years now. So
nice.
So I feel like I can speak on this, but one of the appointments to the department, I think, that is doing the work around antitrust, like going forwards, is a guy called Tim Wu. And so I don't know if you've
Yep.
heard of it.
No,
Yeah. Very, very appointment. And like I up until the point at which Tim Wu was announced, I was kind of I was very, very down on Biden's attitude towards actions that could be taken against these companies, or things, the way in which the US government could play that would maybe not favor them so much. But Attention Markets is an absolutely great book, and The Curse of Bigness is one that I read very recently as well. I think that man is a very good appointment, because he has the same kind of analysis that you and I have been talking about recently, and it's not a common thing to be held between people who are appointed to those positions. Like, they normally either have an understanding of the system that doesn't kind of challenge it in the same way that we're talking about. Sure. Or alternatively, they're just willing to take the paycheck and just don't really care too much about like what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, something really, really, really has to give, because we are sliding into a situation where, like, Google bought Fitbit recently, and
it's
like
huge.
My sister has a Fitbit.
Yep.
Her partner has a Fitbit. Like, so many friends of mine have device that is monitoring like their heart rate and like understanding when they go for a run and stuff like that. And the thing that I always kind of try and underline these conversations with, because a lot of people, when you talk about that stuff, they say, oh, you're just being sensationalist. Like, there's nothing that can be done with this data at the moment. Like, it's what you're doing is you're trying to make me paranoid about this purchase that I've made, or something like that. Yeah. And it's not about the technology that's there now. Like, if you give me 20 terabytes worth of data about yourself today, I can take that hard drive and I can store it, and I can wait up until the point where I have the technology to use it against you in a big way. Like, yeah. And I mean, Google is just a machine for hoovering up companies.
Yeah. And if you want to bring it to a moment to argue their point there, it is, because at the very least, they could pay you for the data they're taking from you now in the moment. If you want to think about it locally instead of, long distance or whatever. See, but I've already, I'm big into Bitcoin specifically. So there's a term in Bitcoin that has really caught my attention lately in all avenues, right? And not to single out any single politician, but it's the don't trust, verify. So I'm really, even if you're optimistic about a certain politician, or I'm optimistic about a certain politician, I still think that these companies have endless pockets, and it's only a matter of time before that politician gets to his price or her price and is able to, get manipulated in a sense. But on the other hand, when you have a trustless technology, right? When you have this blockchain, or when you have this information that is completely transparent and nobody can change it, these smart contracts with Ethereum and these things that are coming out, I think that will eventually beat over the average human politician, because then us as people don't necessarily have to trust anybody. We just need to verify that the information that they're saying is true. And I'm very on that end, right? Like I'm a little bit past the point where I'm putting all my marbles on a human being to figure out these problems, right? And I guess the proof of work would be what Bitcoin is doing to the financial system. It's literally mastered money. It's done gold better than gold can do, right? And then I don't need to sit here and wait for anybody to tell me the truth of the matter, which is, hey, you gave me this much, or you're worth this much, or you're X amount of this much. I can actually go and get that information myself and verify it. And then I don't have to, take Josh's word for it. I just know that Josh is worth X amount of currency or whatever. And I think that on a bigger scale, when we talk about smart contracts and we move away from finances, I like to imagine a world where I was talking to Nick. I think you told me you heard that interview, but where we were talking about, imagine going to the doctor's office and you guys have a multi-sig for your medical record, right? And nothing can get added to this medical record or removed from this medical record unless both keys sign for that change to happen, right? We can't do that right now. So a lot of things happen. And I work at a hospital, so I know these things. HIPAA violations happen where people get into other people's medical records and steal their information. I heard this crazy story the other day where there was an employee who got a Moderna vaccine and then got the other one. I forgot what the other name of the Pfizer one, right?
Is it?
Yeah, right. And you're not supposed to, I guess, mismatch these things. So he called human resources and said, "Hey, what's happening here?" And I kid you not, Josh, his response was this: "Don't worry about it. I'll just get somebody in IT to switch it." and I was just like, I was like, a medical record? Somebody from IT is gonna switch a stat, and that's what got me thinking about that whole like, wait, we need some type of multi-sig. We need some type of trustless way to be able to handle all this type of information. And you name it, the niche, real estate. You know, I just bought a house. It took like 15 days 15 days worth of paperwork to get this thing done. And I'm like, why hasn't this been polished out? Right. And then the lawyer still screwed it up. So it was like, if I was trusting a machine, and I know that's very scary because I'm also into sci-fi and I've seen Terminator and so I understand what that avenue goes. But in my opinion, these problems that are, you know, political problems, social problems, global problems, all are happening because we have outdated ways of trusting, you know, these certain entities. We don't know what's real anymore. We don't know what's news anymore. We don't know what's accurate anymore. We follow, you know, some people think the world is flat. We have this weird thing now where we don't know what's true and what's not true. And I don't think a politician can solve that, man, after that long rant. Sorry.
That's absolutely fine. I think one thing that I kind of what that I thought about when it comes to don't trust, verify is that like this ethos is something that I think goes like maybe a bit deeper than kind of just the technology, because one of the things that we've kind of fallen into the trap of, I think time and time again, is not necessarily bundling in the proof of work, like almost like the human proof of work, into our decision making system, and like kind of gone for the trusting over the verifying. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree that there is a blindness when it comes to the way in which people view the world, that people think that maybe this one individual is going to like solve all of that stuff, and it's just it's not true. It's never been true. Like
Right.
we've been consistently sold narratives time and time again, and the narrative is maybe like modulated or changed a little bit, but it's I mean, we're still in a very, very problematic world, which does not seem to be converging towards something that is like a stable state or like a better state. The Francis Fukuyama was kind of wrong. Like the end of history has not happened, my friend.
No, I'm actually, if you want to talk about optimism, I'm excited for what's to come. It's going to be scary and things are going to shift really bad, but you know, I like to tell a buddy of mine that these next few wars, and you would agree since you know all about big data and you know all about these companies, these next wars are not going to be fought with gunpowder, man. These are going to be fought with servers, with coders, with a bunch of that stuff going back and forth, and who can do it better and who can do it first. I'm actually excited, man. I mean, I'm a geek and I'm into all the tech stuff, so I'm excited. I talked to a few people about this stuff and they look at me like I am just some type of weird guy. But yeah, you know, oh, I'm gonna go. My buddy's like, I'm just gonna go get 3 months worth of ammunition. Now, there's definitely still a place for ammunition. I'm not saying not at all. But what I told him is like, look, man, if you think about these networks and how big they're getting and how distributed they're getting, peer to peer, what are you going to do? You're just going to go in and just shoot one coder? I mean, how are you going to stop anything big that you won't be able to, man? I mean, there's millions of copies all over the world for the same reason that Bitcoin is so secure. I keep going back to that, but that's the best example. Once again, unless you wipe out the world, you know, internet or the world electricity for long periods of time, not only like a day or two, like for good, you can't really do much with your gunpowder. You're not going to get very far. That's just my opinion. I mean, I don't.
So, picking up on something that you said just there, with like the next war is going to be fought like in the data sphere.
Yeah.
One of the books that I picked up recently, and it was something that I read like when it was around about when it was released, but like went back to again just because I think it's such a great book is Bruce Schneier's "Click Here to Kill Everybody." I don't know if if you're
No.
familiar. So Bruce Schneier is a US cryptographer. I think is probably the best way that you'd tell him, is an individual who's very, very um, interested in the area of security.
Okay.
And this book is all about, like, we're talking about a book that was written like maybe a good 4 years ago, and the issues which are discussed in it have become nothing but more pertinent now. But it's about how basically everything is becoming a computer.
Yeah.
Like everything is becoming a computer. Like my house, I have a very tight hold on my network, and I do my absolute best. It's just myself and my partner to not introduce any devices that I'm not familiar with. And if I have an Internet of Things type device on the network, it goes on a separate router. It does not. It's dealt with in a different way because they try and call home all the time. Like, I don't know if you've seen the logs from your smart TV, but it's a bit nuts.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, he talks about how the model that we've currently accepted for kind of software development is all about patching. It's not like what Microsoft do with I guess what you call like waterfall, where you release a new update every 1.5 years, and it's like a very, very big update to the system. It's been tested over and over again, and you've been very, very like careful in the building up of that thing, so that you know when it's released it's going to work, it's going to be fine, like the security is all good. The vast majority of things, and this is because we have put computers in absolutely everything, and therefore we are making it so that the teams that are behind the development of this software are not necessarily as adept, or maybe the better way to say it is that they're if you're creating so many different teams who are making software, and there's so many different varied pieces and they're going to go everywhere, it's a bit more difficult to kind of ensure that security.
Sure.
But basically the patching system that we have now for the vast majority of software when it comes to security and functionality is inherently ridiculously insecure. Like your TV is probably got a bunch of different ways in which it could get messed into, hacked into right now. And the point at which those things are going to be fixed are when they're found out, when somebody posts that insecurity exists, and then the company decides that they're going to address it.
Right.
So yeah, no, I completely agree that like the we could be sitting in a situation where 10 years from now, the war that's going on, using the air quotes, the war is I don't know, let pick one of the typical enemies of the West type thing. Russia has decided that they're just going to make it so that like everybody in Michigan can't access Netflix. Like, boom, there you go. Yeah. That's our bomb. Is it's not information, but it's like a de-information bomb.
Right. It's a discomfort thing.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, have you talked to people when they haven't been able to access their favorite streaming service?
I'm a dad, man.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
No, and I mean, just on a broader scale, but allegedly what they've done with the U.S. politics, right, and how the trolls and the bots that they've inserted to kind of stir narratives and stuff like that. So I mean, I mean, I think it was a few weeks ago where there was a water treatment plant in Florida that got hacked. They didn't say where their hack originated from. I don't even think they knew, to be honest. And that's a different way to be able to attack people from a distance, right? So yeah, it's insane. But the more we have to trust these middle entities and these old ways, like you said, software, these old ways of just handling and transacting and communicating, the longer we do this, the more we empower these companies, the more we give them endless amounts of money. Who cares about a lawsuit when you have an unlimited amount of money?
Yeah.
So they could get sued to forever, but business continues as usual. I used to code Android apps a few years ago, so I have a little bit of underneath the hood experience. And what you're able to do with these APIs and what you're able to scope out and the information that you're able to collect through the app itself without the user even knowing, until you get caught, like you said, right? Because then you can get caught, and then Google can say, "Oh, well, you can't use that API no more, but here's a new one," and they kind of give you like another backdoor, and if that makes any sense. So it's an endless game that I don't think the average person even realizes is going on. I mean, it's a fact that, and I don't want to leave Apple out of this equation because we haven't talked much about Apple in this conversation, but they're at it too. Like I have an Apple smartwatch, and for one, there isn't 1 second that goes by that I don't think to myself, oh crap, you know, I'm giving these guys valuable information about myself that they're just extracting for free. A matter of fact, I paid them to give my data away in a weird, super weird exchange there where I paid to get extracted from.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts, and it's something that has just it's managed to captivate this mind space. Like it seems easier to imagine like the end of the internet than to imagine an internet that is not dominated by monopolies, which is that's an issue because you could very easily provide this thing without having to have that situation. Like it's been inserted into it. It is something that we have allowed to happen off the back of these gigantic data hoovering models. And it could be very different. And it would be a lot better for you, the consumer, if you had a situation where 5, 6, 7 different search engines were competing in order to provide you with the service rather than the gateway to the web, Google.
Yeah. And then they build all those convenience features in there. Like I was talking to my sister the other day, just because I got this M1 Mac, and she was telling me how, you know, Safari runs really good on the M1. And I'm like, I hate Chrome, but it's so tied to my business with the convenience that they've given me that I just downloaded Chrome. I went ahead and downloaded Chrome. And not to say Safari is any better than Chrome, but I know there's better options out there, right? And it's just one of those things where, you know, all the features they add to it are helpful to my business. And it's not to make an excuse. It's just a lot of hard work to try to muster up to try to go bring that somewhere else, you know?
It's the many different kind of competing views that come into the situation of deciding what the thing is that you're going to use. And I mean,
so how do you guys, because it's obviously an uphill battle at Mojeek, right? Because you guys are facing these companies that have endless pockets. So how do you even the playing field? How do you guys compete?
Well, so for me as an individual who has marketing in like the title of my name, I actually find this to be quite an enjoyable like it's a very, very good company to work for, because the challenger status means that you don't do all of that like pushing people off, ignoring people, customer service stuff. Like you actually have to listen to people and kind of understand the people who are using the stuff that you're putting out. So for us, at the moment, obviously index building is a gigantic thing. Like we understand that we are one of basically 7 crawler index search engines in the entirety of the world. And when it comes to the size of index, like we're up there a decent way. Like there's Google on stupid quantity of pages being on about 11 billion, and we're around about 4, and we've got massive targets when it comes to expanding our index. But the way in which we currently aim to do our competing is by very much listening to the people who are using the service and kind of expanding it in a way which suits their needs. We understand that we have kind of like quite a niche group of individuals at the moment who are into using Mojeek in order to surf the web, and we look to take their feedback and take the ways in which they use the service and move it towards something that like would work better for them, which awesome. Is, I mean, it's a it's very much a kind of a user-led development thing. So anytime that somebody sends an email in that has some kind of a comment about a way in which we could improve the service, if that had gone to Google, it would be lost in the void. If it comes to us, we take some great consideration over the idea and consider like chucking it into the pile. I mean, we're a very, very small team. We're about 7 people, but we are always looking to be kind of community led when it comes to the way in which we build and we grow. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very long arc over which we aim to get to the point at which we are in the same kind of mind space as Google. But I mean, we would never want anybody to be using Mojeek as a verb. I think that is a, I mean, we as a group think that's fundamentally a bad thing. If your service becomes a verb, then you're probably in a dominant position. That means that something is fundamentally broken.
Sure.
On top of that, we keep touting our values. We are not tracking people. We do not collect data. We are fundamentally private. We are small, not big when it comes to the tech angle of things, and we're always looking to uplift similar businesses and charities who are working in the space, because I mean, this is there needs to be some kind of solidarity when it comes to different entities working in this space if we're gonna aim to tackle the Goliath that is the Google.
Right.
Yeah, that's the way we go about things. It's very much a case of putting as much resource as we can into building up that big property, which is the index, and continuing to crawl and index the web so that we don't end up in a situation where there is basically the Microsoft search engine, the Google search engine, and then the Russian search engine and the Chinese search engine, and that is everything.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love the fact that you that user community, right? It makes the user feel like they're a part of building, and more lifetime. Basically, more you'll get them for longer if they feel like they're a part of the project. Is what I'm trying to say. So super cool on that end. Now, if you were explaining it to a 5-year-old, can you explain to the listeners the difficulty or the process of building an index and what an index even is?
Of course, yeah. So I guess you can divide up a search engine into basically 3 parts.
Okay.
You have a crawler, which is like an internet bot that goes out to the web. It finds a web page that you want to put into this index. It grabs a bunch of bits from it and says, okay, so these are the parts of the web page that are relevant, kind of takes that bundle and passes it over to another process. That's basically all that a crawler does. It's like when you go and browse pages, it's the same process, except from like some of that information is kind of being bundled up and chucked across to another thing.
Okay.
Crawlers, they don't take up anywhere near as much of the kind of energy and the time commitment that the index side of things does, but very valuable process, because without that, you don't have the information that gets inserted into an index.
Okay.
Now, the index is the repository of all of these different aspects that the crawlers have pulled from web pages. That is the thing that you query when you do a search. So when you put your terms into the box on whichever search engine you're looking for things on,
mm-hmm.
Those terms get taken back to the index. Relevant things get found, they get ranked, and then you get your results. So your index is basically like if you have a library.
Yep.
The content of the books, that's the index. The information, the actual stuff that needs to be used in order to answer whatever question it is that you're putting into that search box.
Okay. And is it the bots that gets that information? The critters? Sorry.
Yeah. So
okay.
The crawler. The crawler is getting the. We also call them like a spider.
I've heard the spider. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
The spider is like spider or crawler, whichever one you want to say.
Yeah.
But they've done the kind of active process of finding the things that are relevant, and then the index is the things that are relevant kind of inserted into a data structure that is easy to command queries to.
Gotcha.
So that index needs to be like built in a way that it's very, very easy for you to go, hey, Rolex watch. And it goes, Rolex watch. I know exactly what you want, my friend.
Gotcha.
And then the final, just to complete the triumvirate that is the search engine stuff, is ranking. So the algorithm. So there needs to be some way in which you can make it so that results that are more likely to be relevant come higher up. So when you query the index by putting like that command into the search box and it goes back to it, those results that are deemed to be relevant, say there's 100 things that are all supposed to match the query of Rolex watches, there needs to be some kind of way in which you can sort through them and go like, this one is probably going to be more relevant than this one. And there are so many different factors that go into that process of like observing those results. You could have, for example, freshness is something that you could say, you'd like, how recently was the page crawled, or alternatively, how recently was the page updated? If we weren't going by the crawl, we were just going like, how recently was extra content added to it? That could be something that was like an up ranking factor. And all of those three things come together in order to build your search engine. The thing that we've seen quite a lot recently, and this has especially been a big thing in the privacy space, like the last like 10, 15 years, is entities like DuckDuckGo, for example, or Startpage, who don't do the process of crawling and indexing, but do the process of the ranking algorithm thing. And the way in which they're able to do this is that a bunch of search engines, but especially Microsoft Bing, are quite willing to allow you to use their index, providing you have like a relationship with them. So that's DuckDuckGo, for example. They will serve you results from Bing and Yandex, and obviously they don't track you, and they will have their own kind of ranking algorithm. That's like how that process works. And
I see.
I guess the issue is, like we were talking about earlier, the App Store on Apple and the App Store on Google being able to ban you if there is just an index from Google and an index from Bing. Then that means if they didn't like your business course, it would not exist on the web. It would just not be in any way available from anywhere. And this is the value of having multiple different indexes of the web, because different crawlers will be looking for different things. They might happenstantially come upon content that other places wouldn't go. They might be directed, like in the example of Yandex. It's possible that it's definite that Yandex would prioritize Russian results over other results. Like they're definitely looking for Russian content.
Sure.
Also, it's possible that there might be some government influence that would say that certain things politically might not end up in the index, because like certain factors might make it so that does or does not happen. So basically what I'm saying is that it's very, very valuable for that process to be undertaken by more than one entity. And my preference would be for a lot of them to be doing this. And it's a sad fact that as the web has grown older, we've had fewer and fewer undertakings of this process, because when it comes to building, there is a certain amount of web pages right now as we're speaking, and now there's probably more, and now there's probably more, and now there's probably more. You're never going to have something that is comprehensive and has 100% of them. That's the most ridiculous thing. Like that would be so unbelievably difficult. But different companies that go and do that process of crawling are going to look for different things. They're going to prioritize different things. They're going to eventually rank them differently as well.
Yeah.
And there needs to be more than one repository of that information. And ideally, there needs to be more than, there would be no number at which you would say, yes, you've done that enough times. Like, I think that you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket in this thing, and you can't put your eggs in two baskets. You can't put them in five. Like it's very valuable to have a bunch of different companies, organizations, entities, whatever you want to call them, doing that process of actually going out to all of these lovely open information websites that we have and going, yeah, build that, put it in the index. Someone can come and
lost you for a second. Back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, yeah. You were just at the end of that. I was able to get the whole thing. My question would be is on that same example is and this is just thinking out loud. You guys may have already thought about this. Decentralizing that index, is that a possibility, to have as many copies of this index as possible, so that if I were to type a search query, I couldn't be blocked by, say, a government or say, an area. Would that be feasible?
I think that there's kind of there's two ways that I think you could probably apply decentralization to this process. One
Okay.
of them, which is also quite interesting, is the process of like crawling, like being able to take crawling and making it so that it wasn't necessarily something that was being done by the spiders that were crawling from the servers that we are running. That also like quite a cool thing. But what you're talking about is basically having different instances that could not necessarily be blocked. I mean, at the moment, we are not in a situation in the UK where, well, not in the UK, like just globally, but
Sure.
but the UK is relevant for the law side of things. We're not in a situation where anybody is attempting to block access to our index, aside from probably the Great Firewall of China, and maybe like there are some other countries. So I guess that there are ways in which you could probably undertake access that would be decentralized, that would have some benefit there. I mean, it's something like we are very about open access to information. Like
Sure.
that is one of the maybe like 5 core values that kind of underpin the things that we do. And so if we saw that there were gigantic quantities of people, or like even large quantities of people, if there were people who were being blocked from accessing our service, and there was a way in which we could kind of cut around that and make it so that they did have a true alternative in search, so they had another index that they could query aside from Bing and Google,
Yeah.
then we would go about it. I think the thing is, at least when it comes to search, we don't currently have a very, very clear way of applying that to what we do. I guess because it's a very, very interesting process, and it has like a lot of kind of tradition baked into it. And also, yeah, it's a need thing at the moment. Like we've not seen that need, but
Gotcha.
I guarantee you right now that if we were to find that there was that need, and we could find a way of making it so that people weren't blocked from that access, then yeah, we would go about it. This is all about access to information, and it's completely pivotal when it comes to your ability to be an informed citizen within society. Like yeah.
Absolutely. Now, and I don't know how much of this you can even provide, but I thought about this with DuckDuckGo. So how do you guys have a business model where you're basically, not tracking anybody, so therefore you can't advertise to them so how do you guys make revenue? How do you guys pay yourselves? How does that work out?
It's super interesting, because up until the point at which we had like the web and Google and Facebook's models, all advertising was contextual. So
Okay. True. Okay.
all advertising was about, like, I will put an advert out on the radio because I know that this specific program will attract mainly people in their 40s or something like that. And then we fast forward to the point at which we have the web, and all of a sudden, no, all advertising has to have very, very specific targeting, because
You're right. You're right.
so we very recently have rolled out contextual ads in the same way that DuckDuckGo do it, in the same way that Start Page do it. Like there is an advert that will appear when somebody searches for something in a contextual fashion, because search is something that you have expressed intent.
Yeah.
You are going to put something in a box that shows that you are looking for a thing. And so if somebody is going to be willing to pay to escalate their specific provision of a service or a product, then we're more than happy to do that, because there's no data involved when it comes to us in that process. We don't have to get that you are of a certain age, living in a certain place, blah blah. That's not necessary in order to do it. So that is one of the pillars of kind of the way in which we are currently working to generate revenue. On top of that, we also have API access, so it can be, it's not a small amount of money that would come through people actually wanting to query our index, being one of very, very few crawler index based services. Like we do have people who are willing to pay for access to that. But I mean, on top of that, we're a very forward looking team when it comes to models for the web. Like one of my persistent bugbears over the course of like this period in which I've been thinking about these things quite deeply is that there are very few viable models for the web that we're kind of happy with and have seemed to have got to a place where like they are operational. And so anytime something comes up which is new and interesting and obviously doesn't go against our core values, we're willing to investigate it. And there are a few things that we've been looking at recently. Nothing has really shone to the point at which I could give you a gigantic primer on it now, but people are working on this, and we can have the contextual ad model. That's not anywhere near as creepy as the targeted ad model. Like it's a much better situation. It's more of a poster in a clubhouse than someone looking at all of your medical records in order to recommend you like a whatever strange drug name it is that they would try and give you. But yeah, we are kind of having to sort of cobble together some different revenue routes, and like I mean, I think that's quite a good thing.
I agree.
It means that we're not relying upon this one thing and like attempting to hone it to make this tool of targeted advertising as sharp as possible so that we can have really horrible effects upon society.
Right.
And it fundamentally forces us to be kind of accountable, like not kind of accountable, actually accountable. We have to make the contextual ads route work. We have to be accountable to our customers, and it has to be both sides of the coin as well. Like it's not just us using people's queries in order to make value for businesses. No, we have to make it so that the search results are good, but also the businesses who are paying us are getting like a decent amount of traffic, and we have to like work all of these different things. It's very exciting, and it's also a process that should have happened a long time ago with the web itself, but instead we went down a very dark path.
Unethical marketing is the dark path that we went down. So I like it. You guys went back to the more ethical side of things on the marketing end. Go ahead, you were saying.
Completely. I mean, it's completely not in our DNA, and I say that as not like a we that a lot of people use when they talk about like the company they work for, like as a group of individuals.
You're proud of it.
Single person that I work with is fundamentally has a very similar kind of analysis of this thing to me, and it's really like it's been one of the greatest things actually about working at Mojeek is the fact that like I don't have to explain that fundamental foundational aspect of what I believe and why I believe it, because everyone has that as a given, and then we build on top of it. It's very beautiful actually.
Super cool. And in a way you future-proofed yourself, because in the direction we're going, where the average person is waking up to all this privacy infringement that's going on, you guys have set up a model now to where people can trust you guys, and you didn't put all your eggs in the basket of the unethical side. Meaning, so you know, if there was a business that relied on their targeting on Facebook to bring in the majority of their revenue, now when people start to shift away into more privacy, those avenues are going to be worthless, and these people are going to find themselves losing a bunch of money because they relied on that unethical data tracking marketing. And we're heading into a world where people are going to be more tight with their data, more, you know, signal, all those things, right? We're going to be more aware of the exchange that's going on. So kudos to you guys. You've definitely future-proofed yourself, in my opinion. And it's incredible. It's incredible.
Here's to the future.
Yeah, man. Well, that's going to lead into my next question. So, all right, with all the information you've amassed in your previous jobs, everything you've seen, you know, last year and the crazy year, and everything you've seen here at Mojeek, where do we go from here? What's the future of piracy on the internet, in your opinion?
Oh, such a question. So I think that when it comes to a lot of the social network stuff, I think one of the weirdest trends that has happened over the pandemic is that a lot of people have been turning off more from like the what we would call I keep on using the word traditional when it comes to this stuff, and like I turned 30 this year, so I like understand like focus that word traditional in the context of somebody who had the web kind of arise whilst I was growing up. Like it is traditional to me because I know
I'm with you. Yep, I'm with you.
but,
And things in tech move fast too. So.
exactly. They move stupidly fast. But yeah, people have been moving away from in a big way. People have been moving away from like the traditional social for managing a lot of what they do within their kind of friendships and stuff like that, which I think is fundamentally a good thing. People have been kind of moving more towards instant messaging type things, like less of the public platform person as public constant thing, which I think is a good thing. I'd like to see people go kind of further with that and start to look at the ways in which you can maybe facilitate a social life that does not involve a consistent public persona that is being used to constantly like build an ad targeting platform off the back of you and stuff like that. That would be great. That's not necessarily like a good reflection on something that is really, really future facing, but it's a trend that I've observed, and I think like that is fundamentally a good thing. When it comes to sort of the future of privacy, I think people are becoming more and more aware of the value of their data. And that is fundamentally a very powerful thing, because when you understand that giving away characteristics of yourself is worth money, you start to put a numerical value on something. And then that allows you to make these kind of higher level decisions around whether or not something is worth something, because you're building value for someone else. And I think that the way that the narrative has been going, and I thank a decent whack of journalists and a decent whack of activists for this, because they've pushed the conversation along. I think we're getting into a space where people start to not bother with some of these attention grabbing avenues, because they have this more fundamental structural understanding of the processes which are happening around these comments, these likes. And don't click like is one of the best things that you can do for your mental health, but also it's one of the best things you can do when it comes to moving away from a system which is fundamentally like an extractive data system.
Right.
I think that people are becoming more and more aware, and that awareness is turning them off from these platforms. And I think that we are not going to go backwards from this point. We are going to go forwards. And that can only be a good thing for the teams and services that are true to their word when it comes to the good business that they do, the non-big data model, non-tracking, non-surveillance services, like ourselves, like a bunch of other people who are providing those things. And I mean, was it Signal added something like 20 million users across the course of very, very little time because of basically an Elon Musk tweet? Like,
yeah.
What that screams to me is that a bunch of people were more than willing to use Signal in the first place.
Right.
They didn't really know about it, or they didn't have the social proof that allowed them to go, yeah, this is the service, go for it. I see a lot of people like myself or yourself who have this understanding of things, pinging their networks of friends and moving them on to platforms that are not doing this exploitative stuff. And therefore, us slowly loosening the grip of big tech on our lives. And I mean, that is both a prognostication, but also a hopeful vision for the future, because like this is what I want. I had my my dad has made comments about my uncle, who is way more of a techie than him, having an Alexa hooked up to Sonos in his house and talking about how like that is a problematic thing. And like he's a 61, 62-year-old who is making comments about the way in which surveillance devices are being placed in our homes.
Yeah.
If that awareness can happen when it comes to my 62-year-old father, then that awareness can definitely happen down the ticket from there.
Oh yeah.
If you are listening to this and you have this kind of understanding, then the best advice I think I can give you is spread it. Like in the least, don't be someone who is attempting to look down on people because of the anti-privacy practices they're doing or anything like that. Be a helping hand in this situation, and we can all move collectively towards a situation where we have tech that is used by us but not using us, if
Right.
that makes sense.
It does. It does. I've been very excited to something in that same sphere. By the way, I laugh about the story about your dad because I just a few weeks ago got my dad into Bitcoin, and I was also blown away that he was willing to see the value in something that people his age look at like, why? I could just go buy gold. Like,
Write older people off. That's they're surprisingly good when it comes to this stuff. Like you just have to like give them the big explanation. They'll get into it.
Exactly. Yeah. But as a creator, right, as a podcaster, as a writer, as all these things, I've been very interested in, there's, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, which is just second protocol layer. So I'm part of a Sphinx tribe where basically people could come in the room and I get streamed Satoshis through the Lightning Network for, every minute that they listen to the podcast or, every, when they're in there communicating with the other members of the group, then it would cost you 1 Satoshi for every single message you put. We could boost each other up and give each other. So it's this natural value for value exchange that's happening where there's no middle, right? The Sphinx is not taking a piece of this. Twitter's not there taking a cut of this. YouTube is not there taking a cut of this. This is literally Josh saying to Jose, hey man, I like your podcast so much that while I'm listening to it here, I'm willing to give you 5 cents Satoshis. And it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful feeling that most people don't ever know, that is happening, don't ever experience it. And I think in this new shift that we're moving to, we're going to get a lot of that value to value where people are not just going to be numb and hit the like button because it's going to cost them 5-10 Satoshis to hit that like button, right? So we're going to share things we want to share because it's going to cost us to share. And we're going to skip things that don't, entertain us because it's going to cost us if we interact with those things. And I think that's a better model than just frantically liking, sharing, saying whatever it is that, we want to say nowadays. And that's what I'm optimistic for going forward, for sure.
I mean, fundamentally, the value is created by people like you or me. It's not created by
Exactly.
Google. Don't ever get it twisted that they're the ones who are bringing the positive things into this situation. It's
exactly. Yeah. And it excites me not only on our level, but like, the music industry and what the record labels have done to, artists and how suffocating that, how I could pay a company like Spotify $9.99 and all the artists get like this minuscule piece of that $9.99. But I spent the majority of the month listening to, let's say Drake, just for an easy example. I spend the majority of the month listening to Drake. How come Drake doesn't get my $9.99? Why is Taylor Swift getting my $9.99? I don't listen to Taylor Swift. And once again, going back to this shitty, outdated model that these companies have because they want to intervene. They want to tell us who to listen to, what to do, how to do it. But we just want to get these guys the hell out of here. Let me pay who I want to pay and let them give me the value they want to give me.
It's hilarious that you also bring up the Spotify model because I am verified on Spotify. I do dabble in the musics, and you get nothing. You get nothing. You get absolutely nothing for your streams. I mean, like it's a project that I undertake because I enjoy playing guitar and writing songs, but you're never going to make any money off the back of that unless you have a considerable following.
Yeah.
Like Eck and Co, who
I think I lost you for a sec. Yeah. Oh,
Hill.
all right, gotcha.
So
That's all
I
good,
was,
brother.
my parted thing on Spotify was basically Eck and Co. Uh, made it seem as if they'd created like this visionary forward-thinking platform that was like gonna revolutionize this and like distribute things fairly. And fundamentally what they did was they created the same record label industry thing, but they just made it so that there's one gigantic record label, which is Spotify, rather than multiple.
It's dirty, man. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I love the fact that we had like the best part of 1,000 streams and I got about 4 cents for it. Yes.
Yeah, that's just terrible, man. It's just, listen, if I spend my whole month listening to your band, listening to you, just give you my 9.99. It just makes sense, you know. But like you said, they want to be the record label. And then the other beef that I have with them, specifically Spotify, is what they're trying to do to the podcast medium is just ridiculous. I mean, you're trying to put everything behind a paywall when podcasting by its original nature was just a free platform where creators like you and I can go on and say. So what they're doing with that is terrible. But this is the thing. How the hell do you, Spotify, and this is an Anchor podcast, so they might they might boot me up. How the hell do you, Spotify, determine what a stream is worth? Where is this number made up from? How come we can't see the proof, the ledger? How come we can't see how many streams I've actually collected? How many? You guys don't show us any of that information, but you want me to believe that Josh getting 1,000 streams is worth 4 cents.
I mean, I'm gonna make a guess. I'm gonna make a wild guess here, and I'm sure this isn't right, but it feels like it's right. I think what they do is they get the money, they shave off 5% of the money, and then they go, okay, this gets distributed between all of the streams, maybe evenly, and then they take the 95% of the money and they go, this goes to the people in the boardroom. Because they fundamentally have created the value at the end of the day. You know, it's always the people in the boardroom who definitely deserve that money.
Sure.
And the creators, because my favorite thing about Twitter is when Elliott Management pushed them to make it so that they had stories on their platform, and that's a part of the boardroom. Like you have to give fealty to the boardroom, because the people who did that process of deciding that fleets should be a thing, they're clearly the creators in this situation. So, yeah,
Unbelievable, man.
It is ridiculous. And like there's one of the kind of like problematic aspects of this is that like there, once again, with all of these situations, there are some ways in which you could quite easily have a fix to it. Like you could have a platform that was less exploitative and that was more teed up so that creators got more stuff. But unfortunately, we find ourselves here. There is a Netflix, there is a Spotify, there is a Twitter, there is a Google, there is a Facebook. And I mean, resist to the best of your ability, bring in the new world and throw out the old.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just decentralize everything, man. I know that sounds weird. I mean, I keep bringing it back up because it's the rabbit hole that I'm most recently down. But yeah, as soon as back in October, as soon as I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, man, like a lot of the stuff just it pertains in every other avenues. It's not just in finance, right? But that, you know, as being a creator, as being somebody that has been blocked by Facebook, as being somebody who has tried to, you know, provide for himself and his family and had these big entities basically just give me the big stiff arm and say, nope, you could go sit your butt back there, buddy. It's just tiring. It's, you know, I try to preach sovereignty. I agree with you. We need to educate more people. Even if they go do nothing with the information, they should know that there is an option to opt out. And I do try to remind people that I was once that guy that said, oh, I got nothing to hide. They could have the information. And yeah. I'm no longer that guy.
No one has nothing to hide.
yeah, I know. But I thought that was the clever thing to say. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not this and that. I don't need to. But yeah, if they're going to prostitute me.
It's what you get kind of like it's a society. It's a very, very bad argument, but it's one that we seem to have decided that there is social proof for. Because if you genuinely had nothing to hide, then why are your walls made of brick and why is there a lock on your door?
Right. Good point. But people don't want to talk. People don't even want to look in the mirror first and foremost. But yeah, they would never get in that conversation, Richard. It's insane, man. Yeah, I applaud everything you guys are doing over there, man. I did check out the search engine, which you can tell, the followers, the listeners, how they can get to it and stuff like that in a second. But I do have appreciated this conversation, Josh, and I do appreciate anytime I can find myself in these conversations,
Oh, thank
because I hate to. Sometimes I feel like I'm alone, right, in a certain spot, whereas like I'm battling these things and I'm saying these things and I'm advocating for these things, but it's an echo chamber. Nobody's listening. Nobody's, taking action on this stuff. And here I am having a conversation with somebody who's really like-minded. It's refreshing.
Maybe that is the underlining part of this, like a hour and a half that we've kind of spent together, is that if people have listened to this and thought that the points that we've been making, the things we've been talking about, resonate with them, like, know that you are not alone. Like, there are a lot of people out there who are willing to take the status quo and to take the shiny things that they're given and be happy with it. But if you think that there is something fundamentally wrong with the situation that we find ourselves in when it comes to this current instantiation of the web, this gigantic big data model with all of these monopolies, we agree with you. We have a similar analysis of this thing, and we are going to change it. That's the one thing that, like, I when I sometimes feel a bit down about the enormity of the battle, the enormity of the task which myself and a bunch of other people have like chucked themselves into, I just, it's affirmation stuff. You just go, no, this is exactly the kind of situation in which they win. This is a winnable battle. This is something that can be done. We can fundamentally change the way in which the web works to make it so that creators get reimbursed for the things that they're doing, so that people can have open access to information, so that the censorship stuff that we talked about doesn't happen. Like, this is all possible, and just keep going. You are not alone. That is it. You are not alone.
Yeah, and they need us. We don't need them. That's a big one.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's understand our value, our worth here. Yeah. Josh, this has been awesome, man. I hope this ain't the last time we speak, because this is such a great conversation. But please let the listeners know, where they could check out the search engine, where they could support you guys, the band, anything you want to plug in here, man. Social media, go.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're across all of the traditional social medias. Traditional, once again, Mojeek. It's a very, very difficult word to find anything else for. It's Mojeek. And Mojeek.com is the search engine. I urge you to come and try it out. Try an independent index, see how you like it. If you have any comments on it when you're using it, please boss them through to us. As I said earlier, we are a search engine that very much listens to the people who are using us. If you think that there is a way in which we can grow better, if you think there is a way in which we can do better, we are all ears and we want to hear you. And no, I got my band's called From Adam, but you can listen to it if you want. I mentioned it, so I'm going to drop the name as well. And also, yeah, we're like underlining it again. You're not alone. If you have this assessment of things, you're not alone. Keep on fighting. Find ways in which you can stick it to entities like Facebook and Google, because they don't care about you. Other people do. Together we are strong.
I love it. I love it. Guys, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. I'm going to grab those from Josh. Let's get Josh more than 4 cents from Spotify. Come on, guys. We could do it. Let's get a little bit of some royalty going there, even though Spotify is going to eat most of it up. But Josh, man, we could go on forever. I really appreciate you coming on the show, reaching out to me, because I know it was just one of those emails that just showed up, and rescheduling, man. You're awesome to talk to. I appreciate you guys fighting the good fight. Keep fighting the good fight. Talk to you soon, brother.
Thank you.
Another great episode. I hope you guys appreciated that conversation. It's a very important conversation. I used to be the guy like you who probably goes around saying that I have nothing to hide on the internet. There's no reason why I should be covering up all my info for all these luxuries that they provide. There's a key reason, because it's yours and you should be able to control what you do with that information. As always, guys, if you appreciated this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe so I can continue to have the conversations I love to have, and you can continue to get the conversations you love to listen to. As always, take care, guys. Later.